case may be. I am Dr. Judy Ann Calloway. I'm the Associate Dean here at the Long School of Medicine, Associate Dean for Admissions and Outreach. And welcome to our monthly or almost monthly web chat that we do. It's the season to talk about applications and reapplications and things like that. So that's the topic of the day. Whether you're here for the first time, if you're here for the first time, welcome to Club PreMed's web chat. And I see familiar faces in the room, so welcome back to all of you. I hope that everybody will get a few little tips about making a strong application to medical school. Okay, so let's get going and talk about excuse me, how to have a very strong application for medical school. All right. I'm using a little bit of a different tactic here, and you know, I love examples. I love specific examples, so I'll have some specifics for you down the road here. In general, successful applicants are very organized. You have a lot of discipline to attack your organizational plan in a methodical way. And I'm adding this piece. You are going to hear, of course, you're going to hear some recurrent themes from me. So you've heard this a bunch if you've been around or seen any of our other YouTube videos. Reflection, reflection, reflection. We'll talk about that several times through this presentation, I believe. We're looking for people who have a variety of experiences, people who are industrious, people who are able to express the meaning and value in what they have done. What does that take? Back to reflection, right? So you have got to build time when you organize your plan. You've got to build time in there where you just you sit quietly and give it some thought. You've got to build that time in, not just for your personal statement, but on a regular basis, okay? And people who have developed strong personal attributes, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Some common comments when the committee sees an application that they're liking, right? They see strength in the application. They make comments like, this person has a heart of service. This person is culturally aware, culturally sensitive, humble, a person who honors other people. There are, in a strong application, there are lots of interactions with other people. Industrious comes up again, people who are creative and dynamic, and there are just a million other attributes that we could list, okay? And it's not a formula. You do not have to force yourself into a formula because we're not looking for the same thing in everybody. Okay, and we had several questions that we'll try to address through the presentation and at the end. We're not looking for this kind of person. We're looking for a person who has a passion for medicine, and there are so many ways that you can take that path and you know, get to and through medical school and be a physician who's putting good into the world in so many different ways. It's not a formula for us. You don't need this many hours of leadership and this many hours of healthcare and this many hours of community service in these kinds of activities. It's your path. So when we see strength in one area, if we see lots and lots and lots of research and maybe less community service or healthcare, maybe that's the way. Discovery is going to be the way that you contribute as a physician later, right? If we see some or none of research, but some healthcare and tons of community service, maybe you're going to be a physician who serves in that capacity with groups of people and communities of people, okay? So it needs to be individualized. It's your path. Some other comments when the ratings might not be quite so high are things like, gee, I just couldn't understand this person's motivation for medicine. I just don't get it. What does that mean? They couldn't express it to us either in writing, in the application, in the various ways you submit. You know, we would get a notion about your your motivation, or in the interview setting. So so when that's not clear, that really takes reflection. You need to sit quietly, listen to your heart and your spirit, and what those things are telling you about you and why you're enjoying this path. So reflection, reflection. Sometimes a person needs to get out of their box or out of their comfort zone. If you have found yourself through your life in sort of the same setting, whether it be a city or a group of people, you need to stretch out of a comfort zone and reach out to other communities who may not be what you're used to. Unidimensional, I have the famous Red Cross story that I've told people in Club PreMed chats a few times. There was a real application that showed some achievement honors in the Red Cross, and one volunteer of the year or something. The leadership was with a Red Cross team during one of the hurricanes. Community service and healthcare, there was just Red Cross everywhere. That's a good thing, right? All good things are good, but very unidimensional. Okay. So that's what that means. Get out and experience other communities, other people, different sorts of things. Another big one that happens too often, even when people have good experiences, a collection of great experiences out there in the world, sometimes we're not hearing about them in your personal statements, in your essays. So make sure that there are people there. I've said this before too. Sometimes when I'm reading along, and I think I say this in the personal statement presentation, when I'm reading along and I'm reading the personal statement, the main one, and then the other essays, and there's little mention of people that they have connected with, mentors, patients, people that they're serving. I predict that in the next section, the personal biography section, I'm going to see kind of light. I'm going to see it be sort of light on experiences. And a lot of times I'm right. So you need to get out there so that you have things to write about. In the interview, we hear the same things. Answers superficial. This goes back, and lack of motivation. So what does that go back to? Reflection, reflection, reflection. How are you going to say? So saying, I want to help people, there is nothing wrong with that, but you can't stop there. That's everybody's theme, helping people, but you just can't stop there. You need to go on and be able to tell us more details in a meaningful way. So lack of enthusiasm, I want to make sure you understand that all committees pay attention to personality. And if you're a quiet person, nobody's going to hold that against you. That's different than personal attributes. If you're shy and you're quiet and you think that that might get in the way of your discussion in an interview, then you need to work on that, work on those interpersonal skills, and make sure that even if you're an introvert, you're conveying meaning and emotion and your passion for medicine in your own quiet way. Okay. So I think that takes some thoughtfulness. Those are for applicants. A lot of things that I'm going to say apply to applicants and reapplicants. Specifically for reapplicants, though, in this setting, we see no change. Occasionally, a reapplicant will just change the dates, pay the fee, and that application we see is exactly the same as the one passed. So yes, in our application system, and I'm pretty sure in the MCAT, the national system, we will see previous applications. Okay, so from one application to another, you've had a year's worth of experiences. So we should be seeing some new things. For reapplicants also, sometimes this is hard if you're working full-time and trying to fit all this stuff in, but we need to see some things that are current. If you are highly motivated in this competitive space here, you should be wanting to get out to learn more about medicine and to serve people. Those are the big ones, right? healthcare and community service, but in other areas too. So we should see some updated dates on your experiences or some newer experiences with more current dates. A big one could be, this doesn't happen too often. Usually people understand what they need to correct, but if the deficiencies are not corrected, then that's a reason why a reapplicant might not make it through. And sometimes for non-traditional applicants, sometimes the pathway is not very clear. You know, you can make jumps all over the place from this job to medicine, but you have to explain like how you got there. Okay. An example would be, we have a student, I think she's a third year. She had a big life, a non-traditional student out of college for many, many years, and worked as a journalist. She worked on a woman's magazine, I believe, and did some other journalism type things. But she was in New York City as a writer on a magazine when 9/11 happened. And that changed, of course, many lives. But for her, it was her personal shift to wanting to do something in medicine. So you just have to explain that to us. And for any applicants in the room today, I have numbers part 1, 2, and 3. So sometimes it is just numbers, okay? Sometimes numbers part 1 is that there are 50,000, 50 something, 50 plus thousand applicants in America with 20,000 spots in medical schools in America. Okay, so the numbers are just make everything competitive. Number 2 is the timeline, and you all hear from, you know, in various settings, college, and I think we have a lot of non-traditional people here. So you hear in different venues, you should apply early, but you should not rush the application. Okay, I think we did a really good job in 2017 and 2018 of telling people this message to apply early. And here's why. Here's the data we presented. Some of you may have even heard it, but it comes with a big caveat now. We showed a pie chart, and we pointed out that if an applicant submitted their application in May and June, those people comprised half of the interview pool. Half of the interview pool. If we added July and looked at applicants who submitted in May, June, and July, that was 75% of the applicant pool in July. We're interviewing into January now, and some schools into February. Oh my goodness. So like we're cramming everything together. So yes, so an early, strong application, if you're ready and you're starting now to get everything together and you've read all the shoebox stuff or listened to those presentations and everything, you've included reflection and great experiences, then go for it if you're ready, okay? And you know that an early application doesn't need to include an MCAT if you're gonna spend a little more time and give that to us a little bit later. So apply early, but remember, it's better to have a strong application later than a weak one that you push through too early. And part 3 is metrics, the numbers of the metrics. So you should know what the metric scene looks like. The successful applicants who matriculate into medical schools across the country have an average of a 512 MCAT. It ooches up every year. So that's a 512 for that. And then I need to look up the GPA, but it's somewhere between a 3.6 to a 3.7. It's probably a 3.7 now, okay? And so those are sometimes things that you can work on. It's maybe a little bit easier because you can do something about it. Might take some hard work, might take more time, but you can do something about those things to shift your numbers. Sometimes people undersell themselves, so this is not a time to be too humble. I think you can show humility, but also be highlighting all of the great things that you do, Sometimes people we see, for example, people who have great grades from college and don't list any honors and awards. And I know you've got Dean's List on there, This is the other, excuse me, this is the other manner in which your shoebox, keeping track of everything, large and small right now, helps you. Because you might think you might have a very small shadowing experience, for example, but you can group that with other things that are small hours and numbers. So right now you're just keeping track to take a look at it as an overview. Sometimes it's the interview, and then other things like we previously mentioned in the application personal statement. I put violations in there because, let's see, let me go to previous. Lots and lots of people have infractions, minors in possession, campus violations, not professionalism. Sometimes even professionalism infractions show up. You are asked those things on the application. It is much more important to most admissions committee that you show that you learned something. Most of us have had some infractions along the way when we're young and not like while we're maturing, but we want to make sure that those mistakes that we made end up teaching us how to be a better person. So we're looking for the lesson learned, some humility and remorse about those infractions, and you do get a space to explain those. So these are more general tips. Apply in your year. That means I hear all the time from people, oh my gosh, I've got to do this and I don't think I've got enough of that and I need some more time for MCAT study. And I say, well, like, why are you rushing? Just take, I'm a big fan. Our committee is a big fan. Lots of committees are fans of gap years. You can do so much good for the world and for yourself and working towards an application to medical school. So sometimes you just need to sit back and slow down, reorganize your plan and apply when everything is the best it can be. Luke 12:48 is, I call it the mom factor, the dad factor, the aunt factor, but there's more to it than that. That is the verse that says, to whom much is given, much is expected. So if you're a person who has enjoyed various privileges, a great education, a supportive family with ways to help you, if your mom, dad, or aunt is a physician, you should be using those resources and those gifts that you have been given on your path in the best way possible. So, that means not just shadowing your mom or dad or aunt. It means connecting with their friends. It means doing some connecting on your own, not depending on them to help guide you along the whole way. Gosh, another factor is sometimes if your mom or dad or aunt, if you or a physician mentor is not currently involved with medical school admissions, you might not be getting like the best advice. So make sure you get advice from all areas. Okay. I would respectfully submit that. And then key question, if you're a reapplicant, there's a key question. And that is, what have you improved? What have you worked on? And honestly, most people have worked on things that they need to work on. And the committee really loves that because they see, gosh, that they were concentrating on work, they were concentrating on academic work and college. And now through these couple of gap years, they've been doing all these wonderful things. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do to improve their application. So more tips, describe activities in the best way. I'm going to give you some examples so you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have said good, better, best for a long time. There's a good, in your personal biography, as you're listing all of these wonderful things that you do, large and small, it's good to have those experiences. It's good to write about them, but it would be better to write about details about that experience. And the best thing to do is write about personal attributes that it strengthened in you, that experience made you better at. Okay. So keep that in mind. I'll show you some examples. You don't want to oversell, exaggerate, or repeat. So it doesn't present well when you have the Red Cross application, when you have the same thing in lots of places. You might be active in a community, but just make sure that you have other experiences to add to that. Let's see, repeat. You can repeat in the right places. If you have a job that is healthcare, make sure you list that job in both places. It's work if you got compensated for it, but it's also healthcare. You're even sometimes compensated for a service type experience that you're doing, tutoring, teaching. Those are, if you're working in those areas, make sure you put those in the service area also. I think that would be perfectly fine. And you can look at other resources and other videos that are on our channel to go through some details of the shoebox. And right now you can structure your resume, the list of all these wonderful things that you're doing, organize them like the application is organized according to the personal biography. And that helps a lot. You're not going to have to then make those decisions when you're ready to apply. You can do that ahead of time. In an applicant, or particularly maybe in a reapplicant, you need to do a real assessment. You sit back and look at your application, listen to the resources again if you need to, ask advice from different people, but you have to say, yep, I have been putting this off and I don't want to admit it, but if I can do better on the MCAT, that is going to get me far down this road. That seems to be the one that people just try to ignore, but I think the averages will guide you. And if you're average and above, it's going to open more doors for you, that sort of thing. Or I guess that I do need some more experiences in healthcare community service, those kinds of things. So look at those things. It's very hard. Let me mention it now in case I forget. It's very hard to give you an idea about the numbers. So I've got some examples for you. I want to say that we sort of think averages for healthcare and community service are going to be about 150 to 250 hours on average that we see in an application. So we see lots higher. If a person has a job scribing, for example, they're going to present 2,000 hours as a year-long job as a scribe, or I forgot what my other example was, but you get the idea. So you have to sort of be real with yourself. I'm gonna tell you now that we're because of several reasons this year, we're not going to do individual file reviews, but that's what this is for, and that's what this Q&A is for, and next time we're going to do a repeat. Part 2 is going to be mostly questions and answers so that we can try to help you individually. But I think you're getting good information here and from other presentations from other schools and TMDSAS and such. So that to help guide you in your critical assessment of your application. So I have some mottos that I tell people over and over again. Everything counts, large and small. So if you say, I was a pharmacy tech, does that count? Is it very common questions? Of course it counts. Of course it counts. You might combine some of the small things, like smaller hours in community service, that kind of thing. All good things are good. Is it a good thing that you're a pharmacy tech? Absolutely. How are we going to know? So all good things are good. You should be collecting all of them in your virtual shoebox, but you really should know what are the high value things. You really should have experience in a room with a physician who's taking care of patients. So some common questions these days are virtual shadowing. I know that there are lots of great experiences on YouTube, and they're called virtual shadowing, but it's a person making a presentation. So are those things good? Absolutely. Do you gain things from that? Of course you do. but high value for almost all admissions committees everywhere is you're in a room with a patient, with a physician who's taking care of her patients and their families. Okay, so you have to find those, especially now that the world is opening up. And please keep remembering, it is your journey. It is no one else's journey. Okay. When you look around and your friend is getting in and it looked like an easy road for them, it probably wasn't, number one, but it's an individual path. So don't stop comparing. Okay. Because you can do this when you're motivated and listening to tips, you can do this. Here are admissions components. I spent some time on this slide for this revision because people are always adding things. So we start about the same. Your timeline starts about in May. Schools are going to start looking at your applications or the applications that are submitted in June or July in order to invite people for August. A lot of us start in August. So that's what the June and January are. But you know that in screening, most schools want to see your current GPA is fine, but they'll want to see your MCAT. So a lot of people hold your application until the MCAT comes through. So do I need to reiterate that? You may submit your application, pay your fee, because TMDSAS has weeks of processing. They have a couple of weeks in the beginning, but then as the number of applications rise, it's going to take them 6 weeks to process the application before we see it. Okay, then so that the MCAT comes in a nightly feed. So as soon as they get it, we get it the next day. So the MCAT shouldn't be the obstacle there. So submit a complete application, even if you're going to take the MCAT later, which I would always recommend. Application, of course, and then the letters. Sometimes people do wait on the letters of recommendation before they screen you to interview. Okay, so a lot of the screening process is that box really should be a long bar, because a lot of schools screen, rescreen until it's done in January. Secondaries I added here. Most schools, I think we're the only school in the nation who doesn't ask for a secondary. There are 250 questions in the TMDSAS application. Our committee doesn't know what else they would ask. We've got it. Our mission is broad, so we see strengths. We train our medical students. We give them experiences to be anything. So we've got some broad categories there, so everybody sort of fits. So I think we need a thumbs up, a clapping emoji, because we don't have secondaries. And no accompanying fees yet. So then there's this whole interview process. You're going to see some tradition. You're going to see interview in several different formats. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. You're going to have some schools that are solely MMI. That's a multiple mini interviews. We do a traditional one here. I think you know that. We try to talk to you for 25 minutes or so, twice in sort of a traditional conversation. We just want to know a little bit about you, but you will run into MMIs. These are the video. These right here. The SOVI, the VITA, the snapshot, those are video interviews. Those are asynchronous. So you're doing that before or even after interview days. And we provide people with a link and 2 questions with lots of retakes. VITA, they're not using this anymore, but I left it on there because there are going to be schools who use their own video platforms. Okay. And the Altus company who does Casper has added Snapshot, which is an asynchronous video, one-way video interview. Duet is a mission matching tool that is piloting. We don't have any information on that, but when you agree to do that, it contributes to a body of literature that might not help only the schools involved, but also the applicants eventually. What are people looking for in all this? So, and then a final review, you make it to the interview, you make it to a final review in committee, and make it through at some point. remember, there are lots and lots of people who just, it just takes a couple of cycles to get in. So lots and lots of reapplicants in all medical school classes. So I want to remind you that holistic review doesn't mean it means there's some myths surrounding holistic review. And it means that we're looking for strength in 3 areas, like a 3-legged stool. You have to have academic strength that shows in your metrics. Okay. You have to have a variety of experiences, experiencing communities and people of the world in and outside of your own community. And through those experiences, you're learning about medicine, you're learning about the world, you're learning how to be a better person, and you're growing your personal attributes, the 3rd component. You're growing and strengthening that 3rd component of holistic review. So if you are weak in one area or another, it shows, and it doesn't make the strongest application. So it's if you have just a wealth of wonderful experience and you are a lovely person who is honest and truthful and a great communicator and empathetic and passionate, you still need to show the academic strength, right? And if you have a lot of academic strength and lots of experience, but you're kind of, have some lacking in the personal attribute area, then probably schools are going to see that, and you're not going to make it through. So anyway, I wanted to add a word there for that. I'm not seeing any questions yet come through. So I want to tell you what we see, okay, in the application. So I'm going to walk you what we see on the application. We see a profile. That's a collection of your name, your metrics, your demographics pop up for us in the very first sheet that we see. I'm not going to spend too much time on photo because you can hear me ranting about it in other presentations on the channel. But this is not like, we don't do this for facial recognition purposes. We don't need your identity. We don't want to match you with anything. We are looking at that photo to say, when I come to the ER, when I bring my elderly mom to the ER, when I feel horrible and I'm in the ER, when I'm bringing my kid to the ER, is this the smiling, warm, friendly, smart doctor that I want greeting me to say, I'm going to take good care of you? That's what we're looking for. So the slouchy selfie, see, I need to just stop and move on, but the slouchy selfie in your wrinkled t-shirt doesn't do it for me. Okay. Warm, your warm smile comes through in those photos. So, show what kind of a physician. It's a professional application, it's a professional school application. Smile and be warm and confident and all that. We see goofy email. If you have a goofy email like Dr. So-and-so already, before you've actually gotten there, you should change your goofy email. Just a word on that. We see your metrics and your academic history. That's kind of fun to see when you went to school, where you went to school, what your major is. The application will show us minors and some other details, honors programs and things like that. We will see your GPA about 16 different ways. We see it overall, science and non-science. We see semester by semester, we look for rising trends, and we see that. Essays, we'll look at the essay questions in just a second. Personal statement, qualities that you possess that will bring unique things to the class, creating a diverse student body. And then your optional essay, if you have anything else that you'd like to talk about in brief. So that's another presentation. That's an hour and a half on the channel, or you can find details, but I'm going to talk about a couple things. I think I am. Oh yeah, I think I am. There are questions about the violations or infractions, and you should put them on there and be honest. A lot of times people do, most of the time, people do a great job of not only giving us lots of information, but showing that they have matured through that experience, and they're remorseful. So you want to show growth, honesty and remorse and growth. And then there's your personal biography that is a very important part of the application. And details of that we're not going to do today because it's out there in other videos, but here are your essays. Explain, they haven't changed, I don't think, this year. Explain your motivation to seek a career in medicine. Include, okay, ding, ding, ding. The important part is include the value of your experiences that prepared you to be a physician. So that tells you we want to hear about encounters that you have had with people, mentors, role models, patients, people that you serve in various ways. Describe your personal characteristics, background, talents, skills, experiences that would add to the educational experience of others, because people are looking to create diverse classes. Okay, diversity comes in many, many forms, and so we're looking to see, and we know that people learn best in diverse settings. Briefly discuss any unique circumstances or life experiences that are relevant to your application, which you haven't had a chance to explain elsewhere. Okay, so the first two are required. The third one is optional. There is no hidden agenda there. There's if you answer it, that's great. We're looking forward to seeing what else you have to say. If you don't answer it, it's not a problem. Okay, sometimes people don't think you have to use those 2,500 characters for one topic. Okay, so you can present some meaningful things that you just couldn't place anywhere else that find a fit here, and you can change topics by paragraphs. I would not, in general, I would not include explanations for why you had a bad semester, or why your first MCAT was, you didn't score what you wanted to score. In general, we can figure that out from the path. That I don't think you need to call attention to it in this way with one of the essays. So you want to answer the prompt, use examples, demonstrate. So big note here, demonstrate your personal attributes. Okay, if you're honest, if you're humble, if you're passionate, make sure you're conveying those personal attributes in the essays. I'm going to actually show if you're a great team player, if you've got leadership. We'll look at some specifics. And yes, if you're a reapplicant, there are committee members everywhere who will take the old application personal statement and the new application personal statement and put them together and will not read further if the essays are identical. Most of us do read further, but there are going to be some people who really that's a hard stop for them. And if you're a reapplicant, you've got more to say, so you should rework that statement. I know those are big things, but if you do it my way, a little at a time with your journal, then it's easier. That's another video out there. So there we are again with the experiences, honors and awards. Make sure you are including anything that you got that everybody else didn't get. Leadership, one of the questions that was submitted is can you explain leadership? So it's beyond officer positions. Okay, any role of responsibility, tutoring, coaching, teaching. Sometimes people make up their own leadership. But why are we looking for leadership? Because there are attributes of leaders that cross over with physicians. Good communication, honesty, listening to people, engaging everyone in the activity or the team, right? So that's why we're looking for leadership activities. So when you're doing those activities, that's what you're seeking to improve. That's what you're seeking to grow there. And you can, if you have there are people out there who think of things to do. So there's the famous peanut butter story. I don't think I've told it in a while. So a young lady in one application cycle, we saw her application every single Saturday. She got friends together. Somebody brought at her apartment, somebody brought the peanut butter, somebody brought the jelly, somebody brought the bread, somebody brought a sack of apples, and somebody brought healthcare information for a clinic down the street. And when the sandwiches were made, they bagged the lunches and they went, this was in Houston. There are several big bridges where homeless people gather. And they went to one of those places and said, here's a lunch for you in case you would like it. But here's also some healthcare information. This community clinic is right around the corner, 2 blocks that way. And here are the services they can do for you. So if you need anything or you feel bad or you need a checkup, that's where it is, right around that. So that's leadership, service. That was like a strong thing that somebody just made up, you know. So research, there are going to be schools where that's a requirement. It's not a deal breaker for Long School of Medicine, because we know you're going to have strengths in different areas. You and you and you are going to show a variety of different things, completely different from each other. So that's okay. Healthcare. So healthcare is the deal breaker. You know, if you must have healthcare experience, and we really think that there should be some service aspect there. Sometimes those are combined. Extracurriculars, the personal growth plan. Please tell us more than you do running and you were in an organization. And there are strong ways to do that. I think I mentioned it in just a moment. You can do your work and planned activities. If there's a lot of things that you haven't done yet and it's in your planned activities section, maybe this is not your year. Maybe that's the clue that it's not your year, okay? So here, I wanted to show you some real samples. So these are personal biographies. These are the sections, okay? So this person was distinguished scholar, had Dean's List or a certificate of excellence for summer research, was the president of an organization in college, did melanoma research. Here are your hours right there in case you're interested, and some oncology research for 650. That's a pretty substantial amount of hours right there, just FYI. Okay, I would say that's on the high end. For healthcare, hospital volunteer for 200 hours, shadowing cardiology in Oslo, Norway for 150, more some oncology work. Maybe that was a combined experience, this oncology, and it's okay to break it out like that. Hospital courier was a paid position, I think. Yeah, see, it's down here in work, but they listed it as hospital experience. Next would be community service, food bank, project cure. So if you add up, this person has a lot more in research and healthcare than community service, but that's okay. That's their story, right? That's how they're going to contribute. Project cure, boot walk, prairie, so some animal conservatory thing. And then look, piano, art, tennis, cooking, food blog, yoga, meditation. Okay. And then the work experiences. Here's another person, had some honors and awards, some research, 1,000 hours, over 1,000 hours in research, leadership with a scholarship program board. That comes across in a couple of ways. That program also had a mentor-mentee program. This person was in a sorority, on the social committee and homecoming chair, did EMS on the campus, was an AED officer, hospital volunteer, various shadowing, another hospital volunteer in Scribe. And then look here, extracurricular, none. So I bet this came out when we interviewed to say, okay, what else do you do? You know, all kinds of things can go here. Anyway, you get the idea. Mission trips and campus. This person has worked as a nanny and a research scholar, and the scribing was high value experience. This person was a medical scribe, 2,000 hours. That was a gap year experience. Everybody loves a gap year. More honors and award. Remember, there's academic and then there's non-academic. So this person had worked at Costco and got Employee of the Month and did some lab safety training and pathogen training for lab work. So I think that that's okay to put there. And I think that would have been okay to list in research or even healthcare as other experiences. But you can see some tutoring, caretaker for a teenage brother, which tells that's giving us a story, right? That this older sibling had responsibilities in home for a younger sibling. So that was probably valuable to the committee. Lots of shadowing, ER volunteer and things, community service. And you see some things maybe in their community, the Persian community volunteer experience, and then look, Iran twice here. So, but there are things outside of their community also, okay, to illustrate that. Now I want to show you what people say. So this is medical scribing. These are not necessarily saying people. And here's what they told us in those 250 characters. A medical scribe works closely with physicians to document stuff in the medical record. Do we know all that? Do you all know what a medical scribe does? Right. I didn't need those characters to tell me, right? What would a better thing be? You know, I learned so much about doctor-patient relationships. I've never really been a patient, so I learned so much about the anxiety and the frustrations of being a patient through being able to help them in this setting. That says a whole lot more, doesn't it? So this person for volunteering said, help direct patients to their appointments and also answered questions. That was good. A better way to say that, listen to how this person said that, okay? Volunteering at MD Anderson, provided comfort, hope, and support. Those are power words. Those are power words. Do they convey to you bigger meaning, right? To patients and families, enhancing my ability to communicate in challenging situations and show compassion, maintaining a professional presence. Do you get the idea? I think that probably is like one of the best slides that I can share with you. It's good to be a scribe. It's good to define, you know, to talk about what you're doing as a volunteer, transporting people or whatever. But what did that do? Those are power words that person used in that description. Served as a liaison to ensure medication was delivered timely manner, resolved issues quickly. Isn't that what you're doing when you're doing a good job and an experience? You're doing all those good things. That tells us personal attributes. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for experiences, but what are the personal attributes in those experiences? Okay. Worked in small teams to organize, distribute, learned how to make an impact when working on a team, communicate effectively, follow the guidance of others. Worked with a team. So I like this too. I put this in there because it tells us how big the team was, 40 people. Taught me the importance of collaborating with others, et cetera, et cetera. Plug for extracurricular. And I always like spend too much time and well, I don't know. Anyway, I just need a couple hours to do this. That's all. We might like reconvene next time and do lots of questions, but these are your personal attributes. Okay. There could be a million, but the AAMC has honed them into their list that you can find. That this is the list of some of them. There are other academic measures that they look for. And these are the Casper traits. And these are also found in lots of MMIs. When you do the MMI, when you do the SOVI, when you do all of those tests that people, you know, all those other things that people want in the application process, this is what they're looking for: collaboration, communication, empathy, equity. How do you display those? We don't, you know, we can't just assume that you've got them. It is not a bad exercise, not a bad idea at all to take a list and say, how am I on this? Am I a good communicator? How am I going to demonstrate empathy? I really feel for people. I'm passionate about helping, but how am I going to convey that in words and in actions? Okay. So I think that that's key. And personal growth plan, you can find more about. And so we're ready for questions about anything. Residency decisions, I guess, like Texas versus out of state questions, MCAT. Oh yeah. Or I'm not sure what that is. Healthcare, majors, minors, most meaningful, gap years, all those things. And I know I've got a couple in the chat. So let me, okay, I want to pull up this. Okay. So Morgan asked about repetition. So I think there might be this year an improvement in the TMDS. If it's not this year, I think it's coming soon. And AMCAS, both systems are going to allow people to check a couple of boxes. When it's big service and healthcare, you're going to be able to label that both. Okay. For a long time, we have forced applicants to put things in a box. And sometimes people just don't fit in a box, right? And that's a good thing. So now you might be able to categorize it yourself. I think this is in the AMCAS for sure. And otherwise, there just shouldn't, the idea is if you're repeating an activity all over the place, it looks like that's what you did. When other people are presenting 10, 20, 30 different kinds of things that they're doing, you get the difference, right? So, so if it does fit a lot of categories, you should pick the main one to put it in if that's how we're still presenting the application to you. You know, there should be one that's a major one. So absolutely, if your personal, and I'm probably have to kind of go back up on this, if the personal statement, I don't mean you have to reinvent the wheel at all. Your passion, your motivation remains the same, but just switch it up. Tell a new story maybe about it, okay? So it doesn't have to be a whole new perspective on it or something. There are absolutely going to be things that remain the same, but where you didn't point out a certain encounter with a patient, where you didn't include a certain experience with a role model or mentor, those are some kinds of stories that you might want to add. I'm kind of skimming the questions, so if I'm missing anything, just hit us up again. Somebody's retaking the MCAT in July. Do you still? Yeah, so you absolutely send your application in because it has more processing time. So how much does the Casper exam or the preview? The preview is the new situational judgment test that you will see. For lots of AMCAS schools. I'm not sure what the TMDSAS schools are doing, but most of us have used the Casper for several years. So probably we're going to still use it. It can be, so we use it as one other piece to incorporate in many pieces of how we evaluate an applicant. Okay, so it is one thing of many. I guess you could say it holds significant weight for those people who may be presenting average application in other areas like metrics or experiences and such, but their Casper score is very, very high. We screen people in with very high Casper scores because something's telling us that they have scored very high in communication, collaboration, equity, ethics, etc. The personal attributes as measured by Casper, right? Otherwise, most of the time it's coming into play as a component. And just so you know, we sort of empathize with you, and our committee talks about it tomorrow, but I think we're all going to empathize with applicants because I think you're going to be required to do the preview for some schools and required to do the Casper for some schools. So you're going to have 2 fees to pay. I'm sorry. For some places, our discussion tomorrow is going to revolve around, can we go ahead and accept whatever the student has done? And we like to say that we're very applicant friendly. So I have a feeling that our committee is going to say, yes, we'll take either as we learn how to use the preview. But I just want you to know that we feel for you. Let's see so absolutely. If a person has gone through the interview process, we all schools everywhere, we never can quite predict, what's going to happen in a cycle. We have some statistics to go by, but if a person is interviewed and you do not get an acceptance, it absolutely does not mean that something happened at the interview. Okay, not at all. Not at all. We all have to interview more. We try to hit the number just right, but we all have to interview more. Is there anything else I want to say about that? So, and sometimes for us and other schools in the Texas system, the in-state, out-of-state, we try to do an appropriate percentage of each, you know, just depending on past turnover in the weight pool period. Okay. And so our school does not use a Casper to consider a person for interview. We like to have it by, actually, so we ask people to do it once they're, you know, get it rolling for the, in time for just after the interview, because that's when we do our evaluations of people. There are schools who use Casper in the screening process, so you will not be screened for an interview until they see your Casper. And don't take the Casper like you're going in for your like blood test, okay? You prepare for that. What is it doing? It is assessing personal attributes. So think about, how am I going to portray in a situation, any situation, you know, how am I going to portray empathy? How am I going to portray collaboration? How am I going to voice my empathy or equity, my cultural sensitivity? So don't go take it cold. Try to prepare. I think that's in the interview. Some tips are in the interview video. So yes, I would say that is Ryan, community service and leadership for sure. I would say if you're doing a gap year and not really doing anything medical, I would just focus on what you did do in that year and what you got out of that year, and find some, you know, you did something right over a year, so you'll have some things to put down. I don't know that you need to explain why it's not there. Okay, especially if you've got a lot of great healthcare to present from previous activities. Let's see. Research through employment would absolutely count. Okay, and you would put it down as work and as research. And I think you should rework, Joanna. I think all those essays should be reworked. And I know that that's a big chore. I know that that's a big chore, but if you do it in little bites, then it won't be so painful. I think that's, Cortman asked that some of the things that I show were bulleted items. Most people do not bullet them. Sometimes they will bullet things like poster presentations and publications in the research sections. Here's what I would say. If you can, in a phrase, portray meaning and value and personal attributes, then it could be a bulleted list. You know, doesn't have to be connected by the noun and the verb in a complete sentence. Okay. There could be people who are sticklers for that out there and want it presented in better prose. Let's see. So some general questions here about MCAT. And so just in general, let me say, if your MCAT is below the national or state average, Texas always follows the nation. So our state average is about a 512. And that might mean a 511.7 or something like that, but we're all at about a 512 now. So if you're falling below average, I would probably tell you to go ahead and reconsider giving that some time. Remember, we asked you to take the MCAT at exactly the wrong time. In a traditional pathway, we ask you to take it spring semester and from January to May, and lots of people do it in May. You've got finals. Those finals are in OChem and Physics 2, and you're doing research and other things. It's just a horrible semester for us to ask you to try to do the MCAT. Another reason I'm a big fan of, like, take your time, graduate. Yeah, I mean, or, you know, take your finals, do well, show strength on your academic work, and then take the rest of May and June and July to just do MCAT all day long, right? Or work that into your gap year at the beginning of the gap year. So that's what I would say in general. And in general about low MCATs, when it's a little below average, 3 4s and 3 5s, you know, anything that opens more doors for you is something that you can consider. But if the GPA is on the lower side, you know, 3 3s and 3 4s and below, then you might want to consider a special master's program. We know the one with our friends at University of North Texas Health Science Center. They have like 2 or 3 different forms of special master's programs, and they do a great job of preparing people, not only academically with that rigorous coursework, but for the MCAT as well. Okay. Yeah, so, and what we see is an overall GPA. So, and you want to make sure if it's very low, if your GPA happens to be around 3, then you may need, I should mention this. It takes a while to move that needle, right? But if people have been out for a while, I want you to think about and investigate Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a way, it's a great thing that the state of Texas does for our students. Some people start college and they really are not prepared. Like, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I made 3 C's and withdrew from the 2 F's that I was making. So, you know, some of us like we just don't have it together to be ready. But Fresh Start, the Texas Fresh Start program, will take grades from 10 years prior to an entry year into a professional program and wipe those out. So you don't have to wipe out the whole 4 years. If it was freshman semester, freshman year, or the first 2 years or something that really affected your GPA, maybe it's those that are pulled out of the calculation. Okay. You do have to start a new bachelor's program, but nobody says you have to finish the new bachelor's program. Anyway, I'm happy to share some more information if that pertains to you. It doesn't help a lot of people every year, but this year we saw 5 people who did Fresh Start who had applications last year. And it was a beautiful thing to see, because their metrics, which were keeping them out of a screening process at so many schools, now all those bad things were wiped out. So, great. Thank you for that, Caitlin, for adding to that. We're taking a later impact. So I don't think so. Prakrit, I hope I didn't say your name too badly there. So it's not a matter. So it is not. So whoever's out there on Student Doctor Network, next cycle, when everybody's talking about, oh my gosh, I submitted, you know, when did you submit? When did you submit? When I got an interview, when did you submit? I got, you know, an email. Well, when did you submit? I got in, when did you submit? It is not a chronological thing. It is not. So you don't go, no, you don't go to the bottom of the pile if you submit later. Okay, because people are looking for out-of-staters, and so they'll filter for out-of-staters. People will look for the metrics. People will look for, you know, just alphabetically, you know, people. It's not a chronological thing. Okay, and when we hit on early on, we're not sure maybe if this person is going to meet the criteria of the current applicant pool. So we'll wait a few weeks and see the application again. And that's how most people do it. Reviewing and re-reviewing and re-reviewing the statistics and information that we get in the application feed. Does that make sense? Okay. Phew. Okay, we're 4 minutes over. I think I got to a lot of the questions that were submitted, I think came across with answers in the presentation, and we're going to do this again in a few weeks. So watch for it. That one. We'll talk less about, you know, presenting information. We'll do less presenting and more just talking about Q&A. So join us then. You're very welcome. Yes, you're very welcome. Y'all go back to school or work or whatever you're doing. We wish you all the best. Good luck. Good luck on the path. We're happy to help you in any way that we can. And it was great to see y'all today. So take care. Bye. Oh, you know what? We forgot to hear voices. So let's say bye the real way. Unmute and let me hear you.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
See you next time.